Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well. Welcome back to tonight's second half. Yes, guys, we are that much closer to tonight's live stream, 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Before we get into tonight's second half, though, a couple links. As you all know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. Takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Alright folks, tonight's second half is going to contain two video clips that I'm sharing with you I have no affiliation with. And I say this because no matter how many times I say I have no affiliation with these videos or photos, for some reason people still, it ruins his credibility. Why would he do that? Because they're on the internet and I want to share them with you to see what you think of them. I've said it probably every time I share one of these things. But anyway, it will remain necessary to share until people realize that I'm not saying these are 100% true. I'm just sharing them with you. So one of the video clips is supposedly a crawler-like creature. And the first video clip that we're going to check out is a Sasquatch or some other hairy bipedal creature, supposedly, crossing a river in Michigan. The first original video clip is like 4.5, 4.6 seconds long. Then there's a breakdown of that video. Check it out.
Well, I remember
All right, so there's the video clip, slowed down, zoomed in, yada yada. You are looking at a photo of the last bit of the video clip when it turns and looks at the person who is taking the video, supposedly taken in a river in Michigan and using a cell phone. Couple different things people have said about it is that it is a Bigfoot carrying a juvenile Sasquatch across the river, or it's carrying a deer or some other kind of quadruped animal that is its prey. To me, it kind of looks like a deer. I highlighted the region that it may be a deer. I'm not sure. I'm not even going to share my opinion on it. I'm just sharing a couple of thoughts on my part and some ideas that other people have shared about this video clip. It's not mine, just sharing it. But to me, it looks like, if it is legit, it looks like it's carrying a deer. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's jump into some encounters. Today's first encounter, November 20th, 2011. At about 11:05 p.m. in the evening, a couple was driving on Mud Creek Road, traveling west towards Highway 14 near Troy. As they continued down the dark road, their attention was drawn to the left side of the roadway. The man, who was the driver, saw some movement and mentioned it to his friend. The woman initially thought that it was a naked man crawling on the side of the road. The driver decreased his speed, swerved his truck in the middle of the road, and directed the headlights onto the subject. The driver stopped about 30 to 40 feet away. They soon realized that this was not a person, but instead a creature that was crawling very low to the ground. As they watched, the creature moved into a squatting position with its back completely straight, somewhat like the stance of a kangaroo. The arms of the creature were held tightly to its body. What looked like long claws that resembled the talons of an eagle were easily visible. The claws were estimated to be about 8 to 10 inches in length. One claw was shorter than the other three. The creature had a muscular body. The head of the beast appeared to be an oversized shape of a wolf. At the top of its head, two pointed bat-like ears that appeared to be 4 to 6 inches long. The entire creature, according to the man, was covered in dull, wrinkly, dark black skin. The man described seeing large canine-like teeth in its mouth. The eyes of the creature were about the size of silver dollars and were shiny black. The man stated that even though he had his high beams directed at the creature, the eyes did not reflect at all. The man said he looked over the body during the 12-second encounter and for some reason thought the creature should have wings, but none were apparent. In the squatted position, the creature seemed to be about 5 feet tall. At this point, the creature was on the left-hand lane of the road and about 1 to 2 feet onto the pavement. As the couple watched in amazement, the creature began to stretch its body. The man said that at this point the animal started to stand up on its back legs, while also falling over onto its front feet. The driver said that in this position the creature seemed to be about 6 to 7 feet tall. The animal then fell over on all 4 legs. The witnesses observed the front claws of the creature were now 2 feet across the center line of the highway, while the back feet remained 1 to 2 feet from the edge of the road. The creature then turned its head to the right and looked toward the vehicle. The driver said that it looked directly at them with a horrific expression, like it was panicked. The fellow saw it take a deep breath. He had the feeling that the creature didn't realize that it was being observed, and when it realized it was like it was caught doing something. Once it realized it was being observed, It leaned back slightly, then reached forward with its claws. The creature then took one tremendous leap and cleared a 7-foot embankment and moved out of sight into the wooded area. The man estimated the leap to be about 40 feet long. As it was in the process of leaping, it was perfectly straight and held its front claws forward. The legs, as it was leaping, were only slightly larger than broomsticks, or about the size of a walking crane, and very long. Then, just a second after the creature was gone from sight, something else odd occurred. A large bird, possibly an owl, suddenly rushed at the passenger side window, almost hitting the glass, then took off and did not return. It happened so fast that they were unsure if it was an owl or not. The witnesses indicated that this creature appeared to be changing form. The driver said its shape was nothing like it was when it was squatted. The woman stated that it was shaped into another form. She thought it was dark brown in color and looked like a werewolf with a little back hair. She estimated that when it was leaping into the woods, she thought it would stand about 9 feet tall. The woman, while reluctant to say it, I think it was a man changing into a werewolf. The man, after the experience, went onto the internet to try to figure out what they saw, and stated the closest way he could describe the creature would be a gargoyle with no wings and a wolf's head. I will never forget what we saw that night. Today's second encounter. This encounter happened a few years ago, but me and my mother remember every single detail of what happened. I'm almost 100% sure we saw something unexplainable, possibly a skinwalker, possibly a dogman, but the location does not add up. So when I was in about 7th or 8th grade, me and my mom were driving home from a therapy approach of mine. No, nothing for being schizoid, just depression and such. It was winter and the full moon, because I remember the snow glowing under the moon. It was only about 6, but really dark because, it's the middle of winter. So we're going about 55 miles an hour when this thing crosses and stops in front of us. The only way I can describe it is if you combined a deer, a dog, and a human. It stood about as tall as our windshield. It had legs of what can only be described as a deer. Its back was hunched over and walking on all fours. It had the head of a dog. No, it didn't have ears or a dog nose, but its eyes were white, and it didn't have a tail. The freakish thing about this creature was its skin. It wasn't a canine with mange or anything. It had actual human skin all the way down its legs. Too long to be a dog. It smelled of rotten meat, and some parts of the flesh were broken open, like if you would scrape your knee. It was pale white, and you could see its veins. And this thing was fast. Like it stood there and just ran across the field in a blink of an eye. Me and my mom had to pull over to calm down. We both saw it. This sighting happened in Ohio between Galapagos and Athens. Today's third encounter. So in 2015, I made a self-funded trip to St. Louis, Missouri, to visit my cousin who lived with her husband for 5 weeks. I'm from Australia, and this was my first ever trip overseas. Though I was 18 and female, I have plenty of common sense, so my parents trusted me to make the trip, which included a 16-hour flight across the Pacific and a 5-hour stopover in Dallas Airport alone. All of this I did with relative ease. The stay at my cousin's was great. We saw the St. Louis sights, and I particularly enjoyed visiting the national parks, being a nature-oriented person myself, and very good with animals. This is important to my encounter. as I am able to identify animals on sight due to a childhood interest in reading books about animals around, so I know a lot of morphology of the different animals. Anyway, one night my cousin decided to take me to the famous ice cream parlor, whose name I can't remember, but it's really well known and kind of set up like a kiosk. To get there, we had to drive 20 minutes. It was my cousin and her husband in front, with myself and their 2 young kids in back. As we drove, we passed through an area that was lit up by streetlights, but very deserted. To visualize this part of the road, it was split into 2 parts, with a median strip separating the 2 opposing traffic. On our side of the road was residential homes, and on the other side was a large storm drain that was once a river. There was large grassy and treed area on the riverside that separated it from the road, which has multiple streetlights. It was rather windy as well, as it was autumn at the time. I have always loved looking out the window at night while driving, and at this point I was looking out the window across from me, which meant I was looking across 2 little kids. We were traveling slowly, probably about 50 miles an hour, so I got a good look at the trees in the median strip. As we were nearing the next light, I saw what I thought was a coyote just standing underneath the streetlight. The night was so dark around the light, so it really illuminated the canine. I was excited. This was my first larger American animal. In Australia, we don't have wolves or coyotes, only feral dog, fox, and dingoes, which do not live near me. I didn't point it out to everyone else in the car because as we got closer, I realized it was too big to be a coyote. It was more the size of a wolf, but its characteristics were of a coyote, pointed face and longer tail. It didn't look like a dog. It had a wild gray brindle coat and thick hackles that were raised along its back, though it showed no other sign of distress. It just stood under the light with its head lowered. But the thing that kept me quiet was the fact that it was staring directly at me, not at the car, not at anyone else in the car, but at me. Our eyes were locked, and I realized that its eyes were yellow, like a bright lamp-like yellow. It didn't frighten me, but it made me incredibly uncomfortable, like I had a sudden rush of adrenaline as soon as our eyes made contact. I felt like prey as we passed the beast, and it continued to stare at me as we drove by. Looking over my shoulder confirmed that it was still looking at me. The strange thing was, aside from its head, the coyote hadn't moved, not a leg, not even its coat, in the wind. As we got further down the road, I asked if anyone else had seen it, to which the answer was no. I found that odd, as it was so noticeable under the streetlight. Anyway, we got the ice cream, me thinking about the coyote the whole time. And as we headed home along the same road, I looked for it, but couldn't see it. I paid no mind after I couldn't see it again, but the strange thing happened later that night. At around 4 a.m, I woke up feeling terrified in my bed. I remained perfectly still with little breathing. I do this when I'm frightened in bed. It was utterly silent, like not even the normal night noises that you would expect in a town. Then suddenly there was a huge bang, and I heard a car alarm going off and later ambulance lights. It turns out that there was a car crash just outside of my cousin's house. We asked around and found out that the driver had swerved to avoid a large animal and hit a power pole. No one could identify the animal. I wonder if it was that coyote. And if so, did it follow me? I know about stories of skinwalkers, but this is in southwestern United States, not Missouri. I have always been sensitive to supernatural things, and I got an unearthly vibe from the coyote, and that feeling of terror before the car crash was kind of strange. I also know that my cousin's husband has Native American heritage. Today's fourth encounter. When I was younger, sometimes at night, I would hear weird noises at my old childhood home, which was in a country town in Wisconsin with a population of almost 10,000. I would hear or sometimes see things at times when I was living there. It would range from weird scratching, knocking, weird animal noises, all the way to seeing bright glowing eyes constantly peering out from the darkness of the thicket in between the houses from across the street. I honestly don't know what it was, but almost at least once a week at night I would see those eyes. Here's where it gets weird for me. Sometimes I would run back and forth in the kitchen since I wouldn't be allowed to go out past 9 and needed to get my energy out because I had ADHD and didn't have a good outlet for it. But anyway, one night as I'm dancing around a while, my dad fell asleep on the living room couch, having passed out from coming back from work, and I had my earbuds in with the little lamp that sat on the corner of our kitchen counter on. When I was doing this, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. As I turned around, it was just almost out of my peripheral vision. I stopped and turned back to the window, which was in front of the sink and faced outward toward the street. From what I saw, the thing that I saw seemed like a doggish figure. It was kind of ashen gray in color, with short hair that looked like it was almost non-existent. The ears sort of clipped at the tips, and you could sort of see its ribs, and it stopped near the streetlight. I had initially thought that it was a stray dog or a dog that escaped from the shelter, as that had tended to happen a lot because of the terrible funding the shelter had. The street lamp that was at the corner of the sidewalk washed over the dog as it edged closer to the honey yellow light, and I could see that it didn't look right. Like, not sickly looking, but sort of unnatural in the way that people need to take a double take to confirm what they had just seen. The dog was indeed ashen gray color, and did look like it had clipped ears, like I thought before. But its mouth looked weird, like it was awkwardly stuck in a crooked position. You may think the dog may have been in an accident or from some sort of abuse. But, you see, most dogs who have body problems like that usually were put down, because many of them couldn't eat or live properly without assistance, and the shelter couldn't afford that sort of thing at the time. And many people didn't want to go and adopt a dog like that. So it was already weird to see a dog with that physical issue walking around without a collar and no owner. I had taken out my earbuds at this point and opened the window a bit. I don't know why, really, maybe to call it, or maybe I thought it would see me better. As I opened the window, it seemed to have heard the noise and turned its head toward me, which, thinking about it now, was practically impossible, because it barely made any noise. Besides, a light scuffle sound as I pushed it open. As the thing faced me, I saw it was very disturbing. Its teeth, its frickin' teeth, they were not canine-like. They were like humans, but arranged to fit in a dog's mouth. And its eyes were huge and red. Not an amber red color or reddish brown, but friggin' glowing reddish color. Like when you use a camera at someone and their eyes are red. And it smiled at me. Well, I think it tried to smile, but the jaw was still at that awkward position, and its weirdly long tongue rolled out. In a calm panic, I quickly shut the window hard and locked it. That seemed to make it stop staring. It tilted its head toward me one last time before shutting its mouth and dashed out of the street lamp's light. and up into the darkness of the street ahead. I vaguely recall that it didn't have a tail, or maybe it was a really stubby one. I cannot say for sure, but I don't want to remember, because I know that many skinwalker stories have it where they have no tails, and I don't want to believe that was one of those. I really, really don't. After the encounter, I locked all of the windows and locked all the doors at night, and kept at least one light on everywhere I went. I was really scared for a whole straight week because I would hear scratches at the garage door, which had another door that was connected to the front of the garage that you have to get outside, and or the front door near the living room. The other noises started 3 days after the scratching started and refused to look out the window or open any of the doors. My dad never heard a thing. He's a really sound sleeper and can't wake up to save his life in a deep sleep. After the 7th or 8th day of the noises, they stopped. But the stupid, distorted animal noises, a mixture of dog, a screeching bird, and something else, remained until the last day. After the 7th day, nothing like that happened ever again, though. Sometimes at night, I would see the red eyes or hear a distant animal noise, but never close enough to me for me to feel like this thing was targeting me. I stayed at the house for another year or so before I moved to my mom's for other reasons unrelated to this. But half a year ago, I started to hear growling noises near my window. But they weren't of any distinctive animal. Like it was inhuman but animalistic, if that makes any sense. I'm scared every once in a while and constantly paranoid at night, making sure everything is locked and there's a light on that room before I do anything. But I haven't heard anything or seen anything since. Today's 5th and final encounter. So a little while ago, I watched Jeremy Corbell's documentary on the Skinwalker Ranch, and there were a few things that were talked about in it that really reminded me of a weird summer I had with a couple of friends about 7 years ago when we were back home from college, and it made me want to share my experiences to see what other people thought. We lived in a rural community trailer park that was sort of in the middle of a forest with a big military base nearby, which was probably around a 15-minute walk through the forest path. My job for that summer was dog sitting for my parents while they were away working, so I had a lot of free time and spent a good portion of it walking around those woods, usually listening to some music. When it got a bit later, me and my friends would usually meet up, smoke some weed, and just kind of wander around. One night, we decided we were going to head over to this, I guess you'd call it an excavation site. But I don't know what they were doing there, other than just pushing around some dirt. It was just outside the trailer park, and our plan was to smoke some weed in one of the big machines they had around. But they were all locked, so we just sat on them instead. On our way back, I noticed a huge orange light that was hanging just above the treetops over the forest. My friends really didn't think anything of it. One of them said it was probably a street light. I argued with them for a while because it couldn't have been anything like that. It was in the thick of some pretty serious bush, and none of us had ever noticed it before in all the years we had lived there. But they just didn't seem to care about it for whatever reason, and we headed on our way. There was also this one patch of trail where the air was seriously cold. It was like walking into an air-conditioned room. I was walking back and forth into it, and it was just so weird how drastic the temperature change was. This was also where we noticed that the light was gone, but my friends still weren't really interested. So we left to go play some video games or something. Sometime later, we were out again wandering the park. We were walking down the street that ran right along the tree line when we started to hear some rustling from the trees. We stopped to listen, and a second later the sound stopped. We started walking again, and we heard the sound, and it seemed that whatever it was in the trees was watching us and would only try and move when we were. There was a little bridge nearby that ran over a dry creek, and we sat there for a while to see if we could get a good look at something. I figured it was probably a coyote because you could hear them pretty often at night, and it was my understanding that they weren't too afraid of people. But after we were sitting there for a while, there was this crazy loud snapping sound of a log or a really thick branch. At the time, I thought it could have been a bear, but we didn't see or hear anything for the rest of the time we were there. The next day, I was walking over to the corner store taking a path through the woods, and I saw a young deer head lying in the middle of the path. That was pretty weird on its own, but I noticed that there was no blood anywhere and no sign of the rest of the deer. Around that same time, my friend went poking around to where we heard those noises the night before, and he found a bunch of animal bones lying around there. At this point, I decided I was going to look around the woods myself. I didn't find anything other than some really large dog prints off one of the paths. There weren't any human prints near them, so I don't think it was somebody walking their really big dog. I don't even remember anyone around here owning a large breed. It was a trailer park, so home space was a bit limited. When I went home, I looked up some wild canine prints. What I had found pretty much looked like a wolf print, but was almost twice the size of the average print. Anyway, that was pretty much everything that I experienced that summer. There were other times where I had seen some weird stuff, but nothing closer to that. Another friend of mine had told me that he was biking to work one morning, and he saw a huge wolf-like dog standing at the edge of the highway near the entrance of the park. Around the same time, this all was happening. I once saw one myself on the trail when I came back for Christmas a couple years ago. But that's pretty much it. I'm sure it sounds pretty outlandish, but it definitely happened to me. Alright guys, some very terrifying encounters. Let's jump into tonight's second video clip. Supposedly a crawler. That's all I'm going to say. Supposedly a crawler. I have no affiliations with these videos. They are being shared on the internet, and I want to see what you guys say about them. That's the only reason why I'm sharing them. With that, let's jump into this supposedly a crawler video clip. Alright guys, that was tonight's second half. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, I really do appreciate all of your support. Your support is truly what makes this channel so special and what continues to make it grow and go. The community you guys have in the comment section is just second to none. The kindness, the support you guys give each other is just amazing. Guys, I cannot wait until 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time live stream. Oh, best time of the week for me. Anyway, with that, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real, and they are out there. If we share a little bit of information with the people that we love and care about, that same info we share with each other here on a daily basis, it may save someone's life that we care about someday. Until later on, God bless you all.